the dust of Keth. Seven clung to everything like a memory that refused to fade. Dr. Jywin Park took another careful step toward the massive stone archway, her boots crunching against the rust-colored sand. Through her helmet's display, numbers scrolled past: atmospheric composition, radiation levels, temperature readings. None of them made any sense. "Jywin, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Captain Reeves' voice crackled through her communication device, breaking the eerie silence. She tapped the side of her helmet, thinking the sensors had malfunctioned. "The air inside is breathable. That can't be right. Run the scan again." Jywin did. The results were the same. Behind those ancient stone walls, the air was perfectly suited for human lungs. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases, all in the right proportions. It was as if someone had prepared the temple for their arrival, even though it had been sealed shut for over 40,000 years. "Confirmed," she said quietly. "It's like the temple is breathing." Behind her, the expedition camp buzzed with activity. 17 different species from across the Galactic Coalition had sent their best people. Tall, insectoid Drellians adjusted their scanning equipment with their multiple limbs. The reptilian Valthene calibrated their cameras. Even the crystalline lumens had sent an observer, its geometric body refracting the orange sunlight into rainbow patterns across the sand. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. The Temple of the Eternal Watch had been a mystery for thousands of years. Dozens of expeditions had come before, but none had been allowed inside. The door simply wouldn't open. Then, 3 weeks ago, when a human ship entered orbit, the massive stone gates had grown open on their own. Some called it coincidence. Others weren't so sure. Jywin's research partner, Taesung Lee, jogged up beside her. His face was flushed with excitement despite the climate-controlled suit. The lead archaeologist from the Valthene delegation wants to go in first. Says his people have studied this temple for 3 centuries. "And what did you tell him?" "That the door's open for us, not them." Taesung grinned. He didn't like that very much. Jywin couldn't blame the Valthene for being frustrated. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Coalition 15 years ago. They were the newcomers, the primitives who had barely figured out faster-than-light travel, when the rest of the galaxy had been using it for millennia. For a human to make the first major discovery in an architect temple, it stung their pride. The architects. Just thinking about them made Jywin's skin prickle. An ancient civilization that had vanished 40,000 years ago, leaving behind only their impossible structures, temples, monuments, and devices that no modern species could understand or replicate. The architects had been gods among mortals, and then they had simply disappeared. "Ready?" Captain Reeves asked over the comm. His voice was steady, but Jywin could hear the tension beneath it. The captain stood near the expedition's main tent, surrounded by security personnel. They all had weapons ready, just in case. In case of what? Nobody seemed willing to say out loud. "Ready," Jywin confirmed. She took a deep breath and stepped through the archway. The temperature dropped immediately. Her suit compensated, but she still felt the chill creep along her spine. The entrance corridor stretched ahead, much longer than should have been possible given the temple's external dimensions. Crystalline pillars lined both sides, their surfaces smooth as glass. As she walked past them, they began to glow, soft blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Are you doing that?" Taesung whispered behind her. He had followed her inside, along with Crosstech, the Valthene expedition coordinator. "I'm not doing anything," Jywin replied. The lights grew brighter with each step, as if the temple was waking up. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that stole the breath from Jywin's lungs. They stood there, the Guardians. Hundreds of them filled the enormous space, arranged in perfect rows that stretched into shadows. Each one stood at least 20 meters tall, their bodies a seamless fusion of metal and something organic. Their armor looked grown rather than forged, with curves and ridges that resembled bone more than steel. In their massive hands, they held weapons, long staffs that hummed with dormant energy. Every guardian stood perfectly still, heads bowed, as if frozen in the middle of some ancient prayer. "By the ancestors," Taesung breathed. Crosstech's translator device struggled to convey a species' expression of awe. 43,000 years. 43,000 years, and not one has ever moved. Every coalition species has tried to wake them. We've used sound, light, electromagnetic pulses, genetic material from 100 different races. Nothing works. They just stand there like statues. Jaiwin walked deeper into the chamber, her footsteps echoing against the impossible acoustics. The other expedition members began filing in behind her, gasping and murmuring in a dozen different languages. Cameras flashed. Scanning devices beeped and chirped. But Jaiwin barely noticed them. She was drawn forward, pulled by something she couldn't name. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with what looked like a command console. Though it had no buttons or screens she could recognize. She climbed onto the platform and sat down, suddenly exhausted. The excitement, the pressure, the weight of being Earth's representative in this moment. It all crashed down on her at once. Looking up at the nearest Guardian's face, she felt unexpectedly lonely. The first Guardian's eyes ignited like twin suns being born. Jaiwin's humming died in her throat. She stared up at the massive sentinel towering above her, watching his light spread through the circuits in his armor like blood flowing through veins. The glow started at his head and raced downward, illuminating patterns she hadn't noticed before, swirls and geometric shapes that pulsed with purpose. Then another Guardian's eyes flared to life. Then another. Then 10 more. The activation spread to the chamber like wildfire, jumping from one Guardian to the next in a cascade of awakening light. Within seconds, hundreds of eyes blazed in the darkness, turning the temple into a constellation of stars. The platform beneath Jaiwin began to vibrate. She scrambled to her feet, heart hammering against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Nobody had ever activated a Guardian. Not in 43,000 years. Not with any technology or technique known to the Coalition. And she had done it by humming a lullaby. Metal groaned against stone, a sound so deep and ancient it made her teeth ache. The nearest Guardian shifted, its massive frame straightening from the bow position it had held for millennia. Dust and small rocks cascaded off its shoulders. Its joints protested with screams of corroded metal grinding back to life. All personnel evacuate now. Commander Hayes' voice exploded through every communication channel, sharp with panic. I repeat, evacuate immediately. In the entrance corridor, Jaiwin could hear shouting and the thunder of running feet. The other expedition members were fleeing, their voices rising in fear and confusion. Alarms shrieked from the camp outside. Through the temple's open doors, she glimpsed security personnel taking defensive positions, weapons trained on the awakening Guardians. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Fear had turned her muscles to stone. She stood frozen on the platform, watching as the Guardian directly in front of her took its first step in 40,000 years. The ground shook. Small cracks appeared in the ancient floor tiles, spreading outward from where the Guardian's foot came down. The weapon in its hand, that long staff she had thought dormant, began to hum with building energy. Jaiwin. Taesung burst back through the entrance, his face pale behind his helmet. Jaiwin, run. We have to go. He grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the exit. But more Guardians were moving now, dozens of them, their massive forms creating a wall of metal and barely contained power. They stepped forward in perfect synchronization, and for a horrible moment, Jaiwin thought they would crush her and Taesung beneath their feet. But they didn't. The Guardians formed a circle around the platform. They moved with deliberate care, positioning themselves between Jaiwin and the exit, between her and the frightened expedition members outside. Their weapons remained pointed at the ground. Their movements, though massive and world-shaking, were controlled, precise, protective. They're not attacking, Jaiwin whispered. Taesung stared up at the wall of Guardians, surrounding them. Then what are they doing? Before she could answer, the command console behind her erupted with light. Jaiwin spun around and saw text scrolling across its surface, not on a screen, but within the material itself, as if the stone had become liquid crystal. The text appeared in thousands of languages simultaneously, flowing past too fast to read. But one phrase kept repeating, written in perfect Korean. Asterisk, asterisk. Recognized. Inheritor detected. What does that mean? Taesung demanded, his voice cracking. Jaiwan, what did you do? I didn't do anything. I was humming, and a new sound cut through the chaos. Not mechanical, not the grinding of ancient metal or the hum of charging weapons. This was different. It bypassed her ears entirely and seemed to resonate inside her skull, inside her bones, inside the deepest parts of her mind. It was a voice. We have waited. The words didn't come from any one guardian. They came from all of them at once, perfectly synchronized. The sound made Jaiwan's vision blur and her knees go weak. She grabbed onto the console for support. The inheritors have returned. Outside the temple, the security team was shouting. Captain Reeves was demanding a status report. Crosstech was yelling something about defensive protocols in his native language. But their voices seemed distant, unimportant compared to the presence now filling the chamber. The largest guardian stepped forward. It had been standing at the back of the formation, but now it moved through the others with fluid grace impossible for something so massive. When it reached the platform's edge, it knelt. The gesture was unmistakable. It brought the guardian's head down to Jaiwan's level, close enough that she could see the intricate details of its face. Up close, the features were disturbingly human. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. But something was wrong about the proportions. The eyes were too large. The angles too sharp, like someone had tried to sculpt a human face from memory alone. You carry the song of the makers, the guardian said, and now Jaiwan could feel the vibration of its words to the platform beneath her feet. The genetic sequence encoded in sound. You are of their blood. That's impossible. Crosstech's voice crackled over the comm. He must have stayed near the entrance, unwilling to flee entirely. The architects went extinct millions of years before humanity evolved. There's no connection. Not extinct. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Transformed. Hidden. Seated. The console behind Jaiwan projected a hologram into the air above the platform. It showed a star map, but one from an unimaginable time ago. She recognized Earth's position, but the continents were wrong. The oceans were different. This was Earth before humans, before civilization, before anything she would recognize. And descending through the atmosphere was a ship. The emergency summit convened aboard the Coalition flagship Harmony, orbiting high above Kes 7. Jaiwan had never been in a room with so much power before. Representatives from 17 species sat around the circular table, and every single one of them was staring at her. She felt like a specimen under a microscope. The chamber was designed for equality. No seat higher than another, perfect acoustics, so every voice carried the same weight. But right now, equality felt like a joke. Jaiwan was human, barely 30 years old, and she had just accidentally claimed ownership of the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. This changes everything. Ambassador Feldar spoke first. His reptilian features twisted in agitation. His scales rippled through colors, green to yellow to orange, a sign of extreme stress in his species. Humanity has legitimate claim to architect technology. To all of it, every temple, every device, every secret the architects left behind. We're not claiming anything, Jaiwan said quickly, leaning forward in her seat. Her voice sounded too loud in the formal chamber. We didn't ask for this. We didn't even know. Irrelevant. The Drellian counselor, a massive insectoid creature named Retail, slammed 3 of its 6 appendages on the table. The impact echoed like gunshots. Intent doesn't matter. Results matter. The Guardians answer only to human genetic markers. That makes your species the most powerful military force in known space. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Some fearful, some angry. Captain Reeves sat beside Jaiwan, still in his field uniform. He cleared his throat. With respect, Counselor, we don't even understand what we've activated. Dr. Park hummed a song, and the Guardians woke up. We have no idea how to command them or control them. Then you'll learn, said General Corvin, the Threshan military commander. His 4 eyes gleamed with barely concealed hostility. And when you do, what's to stop humanity from using that power against the rest of us? The same thing that stopped us for the past 15 years, Jaiwan shot back. surprised by the heat in her own voice. "We joined the coalition because we wanted peace. We wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Why would we throw that away?" "Because power corrupts," Corvin said simply. "It's the one constant across all species, all civilizations. You give any race control over weapons like those Guardians, and eventually they'll use them." Tae-sung, sitting on Jaiwin's other side, pulled up a holographic display. "Maybe we should focus on what the Guardians actually told us. They said humanity are inheritors, that the architects seeded Earth millions of years ago. The hologram showed the data they had extracted from the temple systems. Images of ancient Earth, unrecognizable and primitive, the ship descending. Something being planted deep in the genetic code of early primates, humanity's distant ancestors. We've analyzed the genetic markers." Tae-sung continued. "The pattern exists in human DNA. Dormant sequences that don't code for anything we can identify. They've been there all along. We just never knew what they were for." A lumen representative, its crystalline body chiming softly as it moved, projected its translated thoughts into the chamber. This suggests the architects planned for their own extinction. They created a backup, a species that would inherit their legacy. "But why humans?" asked a Valthene scientist named Crosstech. He had been at the temple, had witnessed everything. Now he looked at Jaiwin with something between curiosity and fear. "Why not the Valthene? We're older, more advanced. Why choose a species that wouldn't even evolve intelligence for millions of years?" "Maybe that was the point," Jaiwin said quietly. The words came to her as she spoke them, thoughts crystallizing into terrible understanding. The Guardian said the architects transformed, hid themselves, and seeded new worlds. What if they knew they were going to lose? What if they needed something different from themselves? The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Feldar leaned back in his seat. The historical records say the architects were logical, methodical, incredibly advanced, and yet something destroyed them. Something they couldn't defeat with all their technology and intelligence. "The Void Swarm," Captain Reeves said. That's what the Guardian called it. Said the long war wasn't over. As if summoned by those words, the chamber's main display flickered to life. An urgent transmission from the Coalition's long-range monitoring stations. The room filled with an image that made everyone go still. At the edge of Coalition space, something was wrong with the stars. They weren't just disappearing. The space around them was twisting, warping, turning into something that hurt to look at. Reality itself seemed to be breaking down, and the damaged area was spreading. Energy signature detected. The monitoring station's automated voice reported, cross-referencing with historical architect databases. Match found. Void Swarm. Probability 97%. A timestamp appeared on the display. Estimated time until breach into Coalition core territories, 173 standard days. 6 months. They had 6 months. General Corvin's hostility vanished, replaced by something worse. Fear. The Void Swarm destroyed the architects at the height of their power. What chance do we have? The hologram shifted, showing 12 temple worlds scattered across Coalition space, all marked with the same symbol the Guardian had shown them, all dormant, all waiting. The Guardian said more inheritors must awaken. Jaiwin said, staring at the map, more humans need to activate more Guardians. It's not just me. We need an army. And if we refuse? Ambassador Feldar asked. If humanity decides not to activate these weapons? Jaiwin met his eyes. Then we all die. Human, Valthene, Drellian, everyone. The swarm doesn't care about politics or who has legitimate claims to what. It just destroys. Tae-sung pulled up more data from the temple. There's something else. The lullaby that activated the Guardians is not just any song. The frequency pattern matches specific human brainwave states, emotional states. The Guardian said Dr. Park was singing from genuine feeling, not ambition or conquest. 3 months felt like 3 years. Jaiwin had visited 8 temple worlds, and each time felt like the first. The nervousness before entering the ancient chambers. The weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The moment when she would teach another human to sing the awakening song, wondering if it would work, if they carried the right genetic markers, if the Guardians would respond. Not everyone could do it. That was the hardest part to accept. Back on Earth, they had tested millions of volunteers. The genetic markers were present in only about 30% of humanity, scattered randomly across every ethnicity, every nation, every background. A farmer from rural China might have them while scientists from Cambridge might not. There was no pattern anyone could find. On Keth 12, Minji Choi had stepped into the temple with shaking hands. She was a music teacher from Busan, barely 25 years old, with no military training or scientific background. She had volunteered because her grandmother had sung her the same lullaby Jaiwin's mother had sung. Different words, different melody, but the same underlying frequency pattern that humanity had been passing down through generations without knowing why. When Minji hummed her grandmother's song, 40 Guardians had awakened. Jaiwin had watched the young woman fall to her knees, overwhelmed by the weight of what she had done. The Guardians had knelt around her, protective and patient, waiting for her to accept what she had become. Hyun Woo Nam from Toronto had activated 60 Guardians on Keth 5. He was a soldier, trained and ready, and he had walked into that temple like he was reporting for duty. The Guardians had responded to his discipline, his focus. They stood at attention, like perfect military units. Young Ji Kwan from Neo Seoul, born on Mars and raised among the stars, had brought 73 Guardians to life on Keth 9. She was an engineer who understood machines better than people. Her Guardians moved with technical precision, every gesture calculated and efficient. Each human brought something different. Each Guardian Corps took on the personality of their awakener, and slowly, impossibly, an army was forming. But not everyone was happy about it. The assassination attempt came on a cold morning at Keth 7. Jaiwin had returned to the first temple, the one where everything had begun. She was reviewing data with Tae-sung when the alarm started screaming. Security cameras showed armed soldiers in unmarked armor breaching the temple's outer perimeter. Drellian weapon signatures. Captain Reeves barked over the comm, hardline faction. "They're coming for you, Jaiwin. Get to the safe room now." But there was no time. The attackers moved fast, bypassing security checkpoints with insider knowledge. Someone had given them the access codes, the patrol schedules, everything they needed. They stormed into the temple's main chamber with weapons raised. 12 soldiers, all Drellian, their insectoid features hidden behind combat helmets. The leader's translator crackled to life as he pointed his weapon at Jaiwin. "The Guardians will obey us once the key holders are dead. Your species has had its turn. Now it's ours." Jaiwin backed away, her mind racing. Tae-sung moved to shield her. Captain Reeves was shouting orders outside, but there wasn't enough time. The soldiers advanced, fingers tightening on triggers. The Guardians moved like lightning. They had been standing dormant at the chamber's edges, waiting. Now they surged forward with speed that defied their massive size. One moment the Drellian soldiers were in control. The next, they were surrounded by 20 meters of furious biomechanical vengeance. It wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration. The Guardians didn't kill the attackers, not quite, but they disabled them with brutal efficiency, crushing weapons into scrap metal, breaking limbs with carefully measured force. Within seconds, all 12 soldiers were on the ground, alive but helpless. The largest Guardian, the one Jaiwin had started calling Sentinel, stood over the leader. Its voice resonated through the chamber. "Key holders are protected. This is absolute. This is eternal." Jaiwin stood frozen, staring at the broken soldiers. She felt sick. This was her fault. Because she had awakened the Guardians, people were getting hurt. Because humanity had been given this power, others wanted to take it by force. The political fallout was immediate and explosive. The Coalition Summit convened again, this time with military escorts and weapon scanners at every entrance. General Corvin stood before the assembly, his 4 eyes blazing with righteous anger. "You see," he demanded, gesturing at the footage of the attack. "The Guardians are weapons of human supremacy. They kill anyone who threatens their key holders. This proves they're too dangerous to—" "They didn't kill anyone," Captain Reeves interrupted coldly. They could have, easily, but they showed restraint. They neutralized the threat and nothing more. Because they're programmed to protect humans. Corvin slammed his fist on the table. What happens when humans decide we're a threat? What happens when your species decides a coalition is inconvenient? Jaiwan had heard enough. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Every head in the chamber turned toward her. You think I wanted this? Her voice shook, but she pushed forward anyway. You think any of us wanted people to die protecting us? You think we asked to be genetic keys to ancient war machines? She moved to the center of the chamber, standing in the holographic projection field. With a gesture, she brought up the long-range scans. The void swarm was closer now, much closer. The twisted space at the edge of coalition territory had spread, consuming 3 uninhabited systems. In another 3 months, it would reach populated worlds. The swarm is coming, Jaiwan said, her voice steadier now. And we can either fight each other or we can fight it together. The Guardians answer to humans, yes. I can't change that. None of us can. The void swarm didn't arrive like a normal fleet. It tore through reality itself. Jaiwan stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Unity's Promise, watching through the view screen as space bent and twisted at the edge of Sector 881. Stars disappeared, not exploded or collapsed, simply ceased to exist. The darkness that replaced them was wrong. It hurt to look at, like staring at a hole in the universe where nothing should be. How do you fight something like that? Whispered Lieutenant Chun, the human officer at the tactical station. Nobody had an answer. Beside Jaiwan, Sentinel stood in the modified bridge chamber. The ceiling had been raised to accommodate Guardian height, though he still had to duck slightly. Data flowed directly from his consciousness into hers. Tactical projections, energy readings, probability calculations. It was disorienting at first, having another mind connected to hers. Now she couldn't imagine going into battle without it. 800 Guardians from 12 temples. 300 Coalition warships from 17 species. It sounded impressive until you remembered what they were facing. The architects had been gods, and the Void Swarm had killed them. All Guardian Core units. This is Park Jaiwan. She activated the communications array, her voice broadcasting to every human bonded with a Guardian. Remember what we learned in training. The architects were brilliant, logical, precise. They followed perfect strategies and optimal tactics. And they lost. She paused, gathering her courage. We're not them. We're human. We're chaotic, creative, unpredictable. We make mistakes and turn them into victories. We see patterns where there shouldn't be any. That's our weapon. That's what the architects couldn't do. And that's why they made us. Across the fleet, 800 humans heard her words. Minji, still nervous but determined. Hyunwoo, standing like a soldier ready for war. Youngji, analyzing every detail with her engineer's mind. And hundreds of others, each one different. Each one carrying their own piece of humanity into battle. The swarm's vanguard emerged fully into normal space. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were organic nightmares, masses of writhing darkness that moved through space like predators through water. They didn't follow physics. They didn't emit heat signatures or energy readings that made sense. They simply consumed everything in their path. Coalition fleet. Engage at will. Admiral Fexvar commanded from the fleet flagship. His species, the Valthene, had been warriors for 10,000 years. His voice was steady. Professional. All ships. Execute Battle Plan Architect 7. The Coalition warships moved into formation. Perfect spacing. Optimal firing solutions. Coordinated volleys that had been practiced in 1,000 simulations. Their weapons lit up the void. Plasma cannons, particle beams, missiles with antimatter warheads. The swarm ships absorbed the attacks without slowing down. They're adapting. Taesung reported from the science station. His fingers flew across his console. Every weapon we hit them with, they learned to resist. The second volley is doing half the damage of the first. Third volley will do nothing, Sentinel said, his voice resonating through Jaiwan's bones. This is how the architects fell. Perfect tactics against an enemy that learned perfection. Jaiwan watched 3 coalition destroyers die in seconds. The swarm ships extended tendrils of nothing, literally nothing, empty space that unmade matter on contact. The destroyers came apart like paper and fire. Guardian Corps, Jaiwan ordered, abandoning the prepared speech she had memorized. Forget the battle plan. Fight your way. Show them what humanity means. On every Guardian-equipped ship across the fleet, humans gave the same order to their bonded partners. The Guardians had been standing in formation, waiting for coordinated commands. Now they scattered. Minji's 40 Guardians launched from their carrier, like a swarm of birds, moving with no apparent pattern. They dove and spun, attacked from impossible angles, retreated at random intervals. There was no logic to their movements, but somehow it worked. The swarm couldn't predict them because there was nothing to predict. Hyanwa's 60 Guardians fought like street brawlers. They ignored optimal firing solutions and went for whatever looked vulnerable. When their weapons ran low on power, they used their fists. When their fists weren't enough, they grabbed swarm ships and physically tore them apart. Youngji's 73 Guardians fought with mathematical precision for exactly 30 seconds, then switched to complete chaos. Back and forth, order and disorder, confusing the enemy with constantly shifting patterns. The swarm tried to adapt. But how do you adapt to no pattern? How do you predict chaos? More Guardians joined the fight. Some fought alone like lone wolves. Others formed temporary teams that dissolved and reformed constantly. A Guardian might use a weapon correctly one moment, then throw it like a club the next. They broke every rule of proper combat, and it was working, but not well enough. The swarm kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more emerged from the wound in space. The coalition fleet was taking heavy losses. 5 cruisers gone, 12 destroyers. The casualty reports were climbing. "We're losing," Admiral Fexvar said, his composed voice finally cracking. "Even with the Guardians, we can't." Jaiwan closed her eyes. She thought about her mother back on Earth, singing that old lullaby while cooking dinner. She thought about all the humans across the fleet, each carrying their own songs, their own memories, their own cultures. She began to hum. The lullaby her mother had taught her. Simple, pure, human. "Jaiwan, what are you doing?" Captain Reeves asked. She didn't answer. She just hummed, letting the sound fill the bridge, broadcasting across the Guardian communication network. On the carrier Dauntless, Minji heard the song. She recognized the pattern. Even though the melody was different from her grandmother's version, she began to hum along.